when we see deals, the first things that we look at oftentimes are what's flashed across an offering memorandum or a pitch deck. And that's IRR, cash on cash, equity multiple. These are the flashy metrics that get a lot of attention. But what's really under those metrics, and those are outputs, right? So what inputs were used is what we try to focus on more when we educate our LPs. So as a lender, are there different metrics that you're really keen on and you focus in on? I'm thinking like debt service coverage ratio, break-even occupancy, debt yield, current occupancy trends in the marketplace. How do you look at underwriting maybe a little bit different than a typical GP and an LP?
Yeah, I think the past 3 to 6 trailing months are really key. There's a lot of misrepresentation in those data points that you mentioned. And yes, it might be 93% occupied today, but they might have 10 or 15% of their unit mix that's turning over in the next 3 to 6 months, which you would inherit as a buyer day one. Rents plateau in certain markets, right? So really there's been a delta between market rent or gross rent and what these properties are achieving. What I really try to take a look at is economic occupancy of a property. And there's a couple variables that go into that. Obviously, one is your physical vacancy. Concessions that are being offered is the second variable in that equation. There's a lot of competition in the market, especially with new builds and new deliveries where owner operators are having to offer free rent just to fill their property. And then the last part of that economic loss is loss to lease, as I mentioned. At Seaport, what we do is we really look under the hood at those three variables. And what that can tell you, that gives you the ability to either extend on an offering or allocate a bit more than you typically would because there's further upside with the right operator and the right GP coming in to execute that management and that operation, a sexy or attractive IRR or multiple. And don't get me wrong, those are important characteristics of a deal, but in my opinion, they tell 30-40% of the story.
Basically the delta between gross potential rent and effective gross income. How much wider could it get based on concessions and leases turning over is very relevant in today's market.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, listen, expenses in most cases are fixed. And so really the deals are made on the upper several lines of the income. You see a lot of operators go in and is to add ancillary income streams or pet fees or implement a RUBS program. That only goes so far, right? So if your business plan is to accelerate or promote those variables, your ability to drive that bottom line is diminished. And it's really, there's an overemphasis on the economic loss of the property. And that's where most of the reposition, in my opinion, comes from.